Here's my 2016 Roadmaster that I'm getting ready to perform a cam swap on. I'll be taking out my stage 2 and putting in the Lloyd'z 558. In preparation, I have put it on wheel chock. I put it in 6th gear on the wheel chock. I'm just going to pull in the clutch and strap it down when I need to move the engine over to top dead center. Need to remove the spark plugs, take the front floorboard off, and take the cam chest cover off. In preparation for the job, I lay out my tools that I'll be using. Instead of removing the battery terminal, I just remove the ECU fuse and the VCM fuse. One is a 20 amp and one is a 10 amp fuse. You can look on the fuse box and see, but it's the big fuses that you see on my foot peg. Both front and rear spark plug needs to be removed. We'll be spinning the engine over to find top dead center on the front cylinder. I do keep the bike in gear, 6th gear, just simply because it's hard to hit otherwise. So what I'll do is I'll strap down the clutch so I can rotate it easily and then let the clutch out to lock it down, and use that also when I'm torquing the cam bolts. Here's the right floorboard removed, 2 Allen bolts, requires a 8mm. Now I like to go in opposite direction as what they were tying in, so the 10 will come off first, or loosen first, 9, second, 8, 7, 6, 5, we have 4 here, 3 is here, 2 is here, and 1 is here. So that's the sequence. I like to loosen it and then pull it off. Okay, I'm down to one last bolt. I'll remove that. I've done this, I think 5 or 6 times on this bike, so it kind of just falls right off. But if yours is stuck, get you a little rubber mallet using the soft side and just lightly bump it to break it loose. Lloyd'z sends a new gasket, so does stage 2. By all means, use the new gasket. Alright, I'm going to begin by taking the hydraulic cam tensioner piston out. It is a 6mm. Okay. What I'm going to do is rotate the crank until this mark lines up with the black link and the bottom mark lines up with the black link. It would be right there. And that will ensure that the front cylinder is at top dead center. And then I'll let out the clutch and lock it down in 6th gear and we'll proceed. But anyway, this could take up to 33 rotations, I believe. It's quite a lot. So what you want to do is keep rotating the engine until this black link lines up with this. The black link is at the bottom here with its index mark, and then this index mark and this index mark are opposing each other like that. That is absolutely the easiest way to line up top dead center on the cylinder. And then if you take a flashlight, you could peek in there and see that this exhaust cam is indexed properly. So is this one's indexed properly with the intake cam gear. At the stage now, we're going to remove these. It's 10mm bolts. Alright, I've removed the 4 bolts that hold the sprockets and the cams and the carrier plate. I've unloaded the chain tensioner. I used, on this case, I believe it's a 1/4-inch drill with a sleeve that I have, metric sleeve, just so this doesn't hit the drill. The last thing you want to do is drop a key into this engine. So pull out the bolts. You can see the key I'm talking about is right there. Pull this out and pull that out. It doesn't matter if the chain falls off, you know how to line it. It's going to line with those black marks. So what I usually do is I remove these bolts. I put them back in so I have something to bump up against. Alright, you want to remove these 3 bolts right here. Okay, this is the way I do it. I reach under here with my finger and I lightly tap. You can see this coming out, but I'm putting just very little pressure on this. And you can see it moving. Okay, I succeeded in not dropping the lifters, which is always good. Just slightly bumps off. It comes off of the front and rear exhaust before it comes off of the intake, so it will kind of just pop, and then you just sit here and just pull this as you're tapping that, but use very little force. See, and it's going to snap in a second. There it goes. And off it comes. There's a key right here. Don't drop that in the engine. That's really in there, isn't it? There it goes. Again, I don't want to lose a key in the engine. So let's get that off. Rotates around, then we're going to pull this one off. Alright, we successfully got that out of the way. It's different than the Indian tool. You stick that on in, fits in like so. Use your carrier, 2 carrier bolts. Snug it down. It doesn't have to be tight. Make sure it's flush. Alright, now we use a nice tool for unloading these things. If you can see, it has a slash here. Okay, here I'm unloading the rocker. So I'm putting in this pin here. I do like that design of Lloyd's. So this is now completely unloaded. The lifter is sitting on this pin. There we go. That's unloaded. This boss underneath here that's keeping the back lobe from going around, so I have to go counterclockwise. So I get a drawbar and very slowly move this because it's going, once it gets over center, it's really going snap. And I just need to get that like that. Okay, I've locked all 4 of my pins, so now the lifters are stationary and I can pull the cams out. Alright, I got all 3 cams in. Make sure you put the front one, the rear one, and the intake in. You can't mess up the intake, but the front and rear you can mess up, I guess. In any case, I believe in using a lot of assembly lube. Just lube it up, can't hurt. You want it to start up with a good film of lubricant on it. The first thing you want to put in is the intake cam. Make sure you have the sides facing out that have the dots. There we go. And make sure you line the dowel. So when this is in, this pin here will be straight up and down, so it's under some preload from the valve. Installed, the split gears installed, everything aligned up. If you notice, the alignment marks you want to go for is the 2 here and the 1 on the intake, the 2 on the intake with the 1 on the rear exhaust. I had to put in the bolt with a spacer to be able to turn this intake cam clockwise so I could get this one aligned. That way I put it in this hole and I pull it down and just tap it with my rubber mallet. It pops right on. Same thing here. I put my alignment tool into this hole. Once it gets down to the split gear, I just pull the alignment tool down and then pop it on with a rubber mallet. And the nice thing is the Lloyd's tool has a socket Then you just put this socket on here and just tap it all the way on, as well as this one here, and you're home free. Pull out the bolt, and now we're ready to install the cam bearing carrier. I tap the carrier on, then I install the 4 bolts with the hydraulic tensioner. I just leave that laying here because I'm going to pull this off anyway, but I want to just gradually pull this plate on. This is something you do not want to warp. Newton meters or 15 foot-pounds. I'll do this progressively. Okay, let's get to 15 now. Tensioner. Okay, now the next step is to put the cam bolts in, and then the chain, and of course put your guide back in. That is torqued to 8 Newton meters, which is 71 inch-pounds. Now I'm just going to go ahead and assemble this assembly and then come back. This is a finished cam chest. I put the sprockets on and the chain alignment as per the manual. Make sure your black links line up and the sprockets will slide right on in the proper position. You could check it and look through the holes and make sure the front and rear exhaust cams line up with the intake. But anyway, I torqued the 4 bolts to 52 foot-pounds. Then I installed the chain guide and torqued that to 71 inch-pounds or 8 Newton meters. At which time I put in the hydraulic tensioner, checking it to make sure it's free to move, and torqued that bolt to 15 foot-pounds to equal the carrier. So now all that's left is putting on the outer chain cam cover and tying that in the proper sequence. I did put assembly lube on the inside. That's just great stuff to use. I happen to use Redline assembly lube synthetic. Never had any issues using it. Do a sequence. This is number 1. And then lastly, number 10. All right, 10 Newton meters, or 88.5 inch-pounds. So that's done. The last remaining part of the job now is to secure the footboard at 35 foot-pounds. Put the spark plugs in. I don't torque those. I bring them down until I feel the washer crush, and I call that a day. And then the very last step, of course, put the fuses back in and then flash this with a proper tune. Since this is a 558 Lloyd's, the whole purpose of this is to develop one, but I have a good one to start off with. And